Well, my friends, the final countdown is on for Starship Flight 10, and we've got some fresh new details of what to expect. With that, loads to update you on with the next generation Starship site and vehicles, and some awesome missions in play with some neat new technology. Let's do this.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
This video is sponsored by Novium, creating innovative hover pens inspired by space to stimulate curiosity and creativity. Hey, Marcus House with you here, and obviously the first thing that you want to know is how everything is looking for Starship Flight 10. A week ago we were counting down to Sunday, August 24 at 6:30 PM at Starbase for the launch, and well, that is still true right as of publishing this video, so yeah, we are well under 2 days away, assuming that nothing has changed since then. SpaceX has also released the new flight timeline, and even though it might look very similar to previous flights, there are still some neat changes. The propellant load on the ship will now start even earlier, beginning with the methane at T-minus 53 minutes and then the liquid oxygen at 45 minutes and 20 seconds before liftoff. Another new inclusion is the payload deployment sequence, now lasting just over 7 minutes. Not sure if this includes the actual opening and closing of that payload bay door or not, but we want to see Ship 37 finally cleanly deploy those 8 Starlink simulators. Anyway, to prepare for flight from Pad 1, SpaceX kicked off this week rapidly removing the temporary ship adapter hardware from the top of the booster quick disconnect. Given this is only needed to hook up the propellant umbilicals on the launch mount simply to attach to a ship, none of this is needed now. It is still kind of crazy to me that Ship 36's explosion at Massey's in mid-June resulted in these rapid measures to continue ship testing instead at Pad 1. Just a little over 2 months later, we've had Ship 37 completing a 6-engine static fire, a spin prime last week, and look where we are now. We are counting down to the full Starship launch. SpaceX does not mess around. We left you last week just after watching Ship 37 roll back into Mega Bay 2. The temporary quick disconnect adapter was all soon unplugged and lifted out, and that was soon rolling back to the Sanchez site to be stored until that is needed again. We will most likely see these makeshift components come back out again for Flight 11 testing after the next booster has had its static fire done at Pad 1. That's because Ship 38 will need that same makeshift setup, and that should be the last that those temporary structures are needed. Anyway, SpaceX soon got to work taking down the scaffolding around the booster quick disconnect, and on Tuesday they had opened it up. Now, it took a little longer than I expected to see Booster 16 in action this week, which, of course, needed to be placed down on the orbital launch mount first for flight. It had first been stationed here in the rocket garden, and on Monday, there we were watching the team begin the process of installing the flight termination system. This also includes the installation of the explosive charges that would open up a big hole in the tank to ensure that it can't continue any further in an unwanted trajectory. All of this seemed to go smoothly because the aerial lifts were soon coming back down again. With all that installed, a road delay was set for Thursday to transport it to the launch site. Sure enough, right at the start of that window, here was Booster 16 making its way towards Highway 4 and starting its rollout passing the Star Factory. SpaceX grabbed a great drone shot of this move. It's amazing how much this site has changed over the past few years. Before long, it was smoothly rolling into the launch site and Sean was out there recording away at a distance. The site is always a flurry of activity, even as these monsters roll in. Pad 2 work there is running 24/7, lit up in the darkness. Soon, of course, it was preparing for the lift with those monstrous tower arms. They rose to the usual stacking height and had soon grasped it by the lifting points. Right at a very picturesque time at dawn, the booster rose into the air, translated over, and was gently lowered into the launch mount. Again, you can't beat SpaceX's perspectives on this one. The Raptor engines have their covers on here to protect them from any minor bumps, but yeah, everything looked great for Booster 16 because not even a day after the lift, both of the stabilising arms on the launch mount had already been removed. The work platform was soon lowered as well, so those Raptor covers would have already been taken off at that point. Indeed, all eyes were now on its flight partner Ship 37 to be stacked, but we were still waiting for that to appear late in the week. Well, we have just had the road delay published telling us they plan to roll Ship 37 at 4 PM on Saturday, so yeah, they are cutting that quite close to the launch. Just last night, on Friday evening, we also saw the payload bay door opening up as the team began the installation process for the dummy Starlink satellites, including, of course, the loading tray rising. They can then lift the dummy payloads onto the tray and slide them into the ship. Fingers crossed that the weather holds up for the launch because there's quite a lot of rain forecasted over the next few days. Just a quick clarification for you. I've had many people asking if SpaceX has changed the plan and are now going for a booster catch. I wasn't sure why I was getting those questions, but this post late in the week seemed to cause that confusion. No, there is still no catch, and this post was just indicating a flight Sunday, but I get why that would seem confusing. Regardless, exciting times again with Flight 10. Speaking of, the new merch design is linked right there below if you are after some new merch. It all supports the coverage each week here along with Tony's work with these amazing infographics. Thanks for being subscribed and supporting the work and love around all of this. Fingers crossed for a very successful flight of Starship this time around. What do you think? Will we finally get to see a clean payload deployment? Let me know. Now, the progress at the new Pad 2 might not be as obvious as it was during its rapid assembly phase, but everything is still quickly coming together. We are now in the phase where, piece by piece, a lot more of the hardware is being tested and brought online ready for action. One area that I've really been watching with excitement is this here, where SpaceX has been installing these gas generators. Unlike Pad 1, where they use stored high-pressure gas in these tanks, this system is radically different. It almost seems like a rocket engine setup itself, all to be used to generate the huge gas pressure needed. I can't wait to see it fully in action. Of course, with such a new design, a long testing campaign is in order, which they are now doing. Check this out. There was quite the insane plume there, and this doesn't seem like all of them running. Yeah, it's going to be quite the sight seeing all of these working to pressurize the big water tanks ahead of a launch. Now, speaking of, I've previously talked about us expecting more water storage tanks given that SpaceX had already installed these new footings. This week we got just that as they rolled in the 5th big water tank to fully finish off this side. The propellant pump farm is also rapidly being commissioned with more parts installed. In fact, the methane side has now been completed to the point that SpaceX appears to have kicked off testing with liquid nitrogen. Using the inert cryogenics in this way, that means that any leaks discovered can't lead to an explosive event or cause fires. The testing continued through the propellant lines heading towards the booster support bunker next to the launch mount. Now, this week we caught the first ever venting originating from somewhere inside that bunker. Now, you may notice during the venting from the bunker that they created this big cloud close by. You can see the setup here of the subchillers and the fan boxes that blast their exhaust upward into the air so that it is quickly blown away rather than just sinking straight to the ground. Now, moving over to the Sanchez site, as predicted, the end has indeed come for one of the oldest test articles, SN2. After it had been moved close to the scrapyard with its concrete base, as I talked about a few weeks back, it was lifted off to start that scrapping process. Now, moving into the production area, work is continuing very steadily on future ship production. Given that there is only the one remaining Block 2 Ship 38 after Flight 10, the attention has turned to this one to see how quickly that will be ready for static fire. Last week we saw some Raptor engines moving into Mega Bay 2, and that continued this week. Raptor vacuum engine number 580 was spotted on Lab Padre's Rover 1 camera, moving in on Sunday. Now, interestingly, one of those engines that we thought was for Ship 38 last week actually must have been this old Raptor 1 that was spotted further away inside the Star Factory more recently. This Raptor 1 was previously installed on the old Booster 3, and the Raptor 2 sitting right next to it was from Booster 12, which was the first ever Super Heavy caught by the tower arms. On Friday, we saw the first confirmed Raptor 3 in Starbase moving here too, with serial number 20 there with a special Texas decal. These, we suspect, had been moved here for the technical presentation on Flight 10 that was hinted at a few weeks ago. The other day, it was suggested that this should happen on Sunday, but we may not see the result of that until after the flight unless it is streamed live. Now we've got some neat new progress on the first Block 3 ship under construction. Before diving into that, big thanks to Novium for sponsoring today's video. If you've been watching this channel for years, you would know how much of a fan I am of the Novium Hover Pen series. I've had this sitting on my desk here all that time, and it's the only pen that I ever reach for. This is the Hover Pen Interstellar, and of course it's not just a pen, it's a beautiful desk decoration that you can also fidget with, and it's a great conversation starter for anyone popping into this space. Thanks to its magnetic balance, you can see the pen itself floating elegantly at a precise 23.5 degree tilt. It's made at this specific angle to match the Earth's axial tilt, which gives us those wonderful seasons of the year. Personally, I love the space black, but there are a number of colours that you can pick this up with. There's also Mars Magma, Starlight Silver, or Neptune Blue. If you want to add a little extra, like my one here, there is the 18 karat gold plated option that includes this gold band, but if you want to go even further, you can also add a literal piece of the cosmos with the meteorite edition. At the tip, there is a little fragment embedded taken from a meteorite estimated to be over 4.5 billion years old. I love that. Novium's pens are all refillable and made from durable premium aluminum, so they're designed to last forever. If you love writing with a fountain pen, the Hover Pen Future has an interchangeable fountain tip when you want to write in that unique style. You can then just switch it out for a typical rollerball tip whenever you need. So yeah, if you're after a unique gift or you want a sweet addition to your own desk, check them out. They come packaged up beautifully, and using my link, you can pick up a huge 15% discount when you use the code MarcusHouse. The link is right there below, or you can scan the QR code right there on screen. Thank you, Novium. Okay, so some nice updates to share here around the first Block 3 ship under construction. Right as I was wrapping up last week's video, the nose cone for Ship 39, nice confirmation thanks to Starship Gazer there by the way, was lifted inside the Star Factory, revealing that a bunch of tiles had already been installed. With that though, these two protruding pieces at either end. Yes, that is the next iteration of the ship catching hardware. Unlike the current Block 2 design, this looks a lot more refined and integrated into the vehicle. It appears that this will receive what looks to be ramps that not only serve in giving it a lot more structural rigidity, but also improve on the aerodynamics. After all, this doesn't just need to be able to handle the catch, but also the re-entry before that. Now, not long after this, we could see a lot more of the nose cone through the windows of the Star Factory, so this is a good indication that this has now been stacked on top of the payload bay. This means we shouldn't be too far away from this rolling out towards Mega Bay 2, all ready for further stacking operations. Now, as a quick side note, last week I mentioned the new workstation being installed in here, and I accidentally showed some images of boosters in Mega Bay 1. Mega Bay 2 is, as the name implies, is for the second Starship stages, and that is the bay that has now got the 4 workstations. The first set of 3 with 2 at the left side and the third visible in the middle, and then the 4th and the new one at the front of the right side. Right outside, of course, the Gigabay Foundation is still screaming along, even quicker perhaps than the identical bay being built in Florida. The removal of soil and installation of rebar is a huge continuing job, but more importantly at the back corner here, they have started to place a temporary wooden framework. They need to do all of this in sections due to the gigantic size of this project, so they'll be pouring only this corner section for now before moving on. Now, we haven't yet seen any new sections for Booster 18 roll out towards the Mega Bay. The next section for that is the aft section, which will have the 33 Raptor 3s eventually installed. We're not entirely sure why the delay here, but we suspect that this is related to the test article still at Massey's. Well, we've got some good news there. This has been inside the structural verification rig now for quite some time, even before Ship 36 rapidly disassembled itself, but this week the test article was back in action. It underwent not just 1 but 2 long-duration cryogenic tests with it fully frosted up. With these tests now done, which verify the structural integrity of the new changes on the next generation design, hopefully this means that we will see that aft section for Booster 18 roll out sooner rather than later. Now, the launch of the Starlink Group 17.5 mission had some pretty sweet views. Monday morning from Vandenberg, we weren't greeted with a blocked out foggy view. It was instead a beautiful clear day as this one left the pad. It was only Flight 9 for Booster 1088 pushing the second stage out of the atmosphere, but take a look at that ground camera tracking. That is an unreal shot. It was also Flight 100 for Falcon 9 for the year, which is pretty crazy. It took right up to mid-October last year for SpaceX to break one 100, so it just goes to show how much they've ramped up the frequency of launches in 2025. Of course, it is going to get even more insane soon because they've already submitted plans to have up to 95 launches a year just from Vandenberg alone. Another set of 24 in the Starlink stack for this mission to place them into Group 17, and a few minutes later, there was the touchdown on the drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. 4 days later, it was pretty much a repeat of that. Again from Vandenberg at the same pad, there goes another on Friday morning. This time though, it was Booster 1081 on its 17th launch, and with the mission earlier in the week for Group 17.5, yes, you guessed it, this was Mission 17.6. Another identical batch of 24 satellites, and that same drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, had returned the previous booster home and already returned back out for the catch of this one. There wasn't any Starlink missions from Florida at all, but of course that didn't mean that there was no action from that side. SpaceX have launched the X-37B orbital test vehicle from Launch Complex 39A. This mission, USSF-36 for the US Space Force, is doing some pretty groundbreaking stuff, and although it is a secretive mission, they were happy for us to know at least some of the interesting stuff that they are testing out here. Along with demonstrations of high bandwidth inter-satellite laser communication technology, which is exciting by itself, it also has on board experimental equipment to test out new navigation and positioning technology using a quantum inertial sensor. Now, I have talked about GPS alternatives before, but this seems to be one of the more exciting and promising technologies to look out for. GPS doesn't work everywhere. You could be in deep space, underground or underwater, just as a few examples. With GPS, you need to have a reasonable line of sight to at least 4 satellites. Remember as well that GPS signals can also be jammed or even spoofed in nefarious or even unintentional ways. Imagine instead if a vehicle could understand its position during travel without external data. Well, by using a quantum inertial sensor, as is on the X-37B, it seems possible to have spacecraft, aircraft and ships track and navigate with super precision even when GPS is not available. This means if you knew your start position and speed, processing all this quantum data, in theory, allows you to know exactly how far you've moved from your initial course and where you now would be. I think this is all fascinating, and I'm certainly not even close to an expert on such things. If you want to know a lot more about exactly how this works, check out this video from Dr. Ben Miles, that is linked in the description for you. Now, of course, the flight all went like clockwork. After stage separation, we didn't get to see a great deal, being the secretive military mission that it is, but Booster 1092 was already doing a boost back burn. Yes, it was another exciting return to launch site mission. Sadly, this was all done in darkness, but after screaming back down through the atmosphere and kicking off that landing burn, here it was heading down onto landing zone 2 for its 6th touchdown. And there we go, nailed it again as always. Another exciting week with Falcon 9. Remember, we also have SpaceX's 33rd commercial resupply mission to the International Space Station blasting off shortly too. Now this one is more intriguing than it might first appear, because Dragon is going to kick off a reboost demonstration of the station to maintain its current altitude. Now, the station needs to do this periodically due to the tiny amount of atmospheric drag that still exists even in this almost perfect vacuum. Normally the reboosts are done with other vehicles like Progress or Cygnus, but this time there is brand new hardware located in the trunk of Dragon that contains an independent propellant system. This has 2 Draco engines attached to it. Now, many people confuse Dracos for Super Dracos. We certainly aren't talking about these hugely powerful Super Dracos in Dragon's abort system. That wouldn't go well. Instead, we are talking about Draco engines. Dragon has on board 16 of these for subtle attitude control and maneuvering. Each of those Draco engines produces about 400 newtons or 90 pounds of thrust force. Now, this new boost kit with the 2 Dracos attached is going to allow SpaceX to help sustain the ISS orbit starting next month in September. It'll then do a series of burns through to November, I believe. Now, this won't be the first ever reboost that SpaceX has done. During SpaceX's 31st commercial resupply mission in November last year, the stock Dragon did a demonstration too, so this is really the next ramp up to that capability. Now, NASA's new acting administrator Sean Duffy has been in the role for just over a month, and he's already made some pretty big statements. He has emphasised that NASA should be about exploration, not Earth science and climate research. That's sparked a lot of debate because Earth studies have been one of NASA's core missions from the very beginning. Given that the National Aeronautics and Space Act of 1958 specifically calls for the expansion of human knowledge of phenomena in the atmosphere and space, this proposed direction looks to change even that. If all these changes happen, it'll be interesting to see if any of this study work could end up falling instead to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which would make sense, but I don't believe they have the hardware or the infrastructure to do what NASA is currently doing. To be fair, NASA is already walking a very thin tightrope with its funding to balance everything with moon missions, future Mars plans and commercial partnerships, so focusing on deep space primarily could make sense. Sean is also talking about ambitious goals like developing nuclear systems to power a future lunar base, and yeah, those are really exciting ideas, but you would assume that it all requires more total funding, not less. Right now, of course, the proposed budget cuts still have to go through Congress, so it's still far from certain how this plays out. The main concern is that with big budget changes and uncertainty, NASA's goals for Artemis and future Mars missions may fall further behind. If so, it could leave China to pick up that high ground first, and right now, they are hitting major milestones to land crewed missions on the moon before 2030. They have tested a full-scale prototype of the lunar lander simulating low-gravity landings and takeoffs outside Beijing. Days later, engineers then fired up the centrepiece of the new Long March rocket in progress that has 7 kerosene-fueled engines powering a booster capable of lifting a massive 70 tonnes to orbit. Combine that with the recent test of the Crew Capsule Launch Escape System, and China now has all 3 pillars of a lunar program: the lander, the rocket, and the crew vehicle. So yeah, it is certainly, let's say, an intriguing time. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to hit subscribe so we get to keep making them. If you want to continue with more space goodness, check out this video here next, or maybe these videos. Thanks for watching all this way through. As always, I'll see you all in the next video.